Welcome to the Darkstream. Voxday, voxday.blogspot.com, and purveyor of actual news. To a certain extent, I'm actually more interested in history, in things that happened in the past, than in current events. But we do talk about current events from time to time. And one of them is this whole fake news, fake bomb, blue wave, feel sorry for the Democrats, orange man bad. I mean, this whole situation is so ludicrous. It is so obviously a false flag that there is absolutely no way that anyone should take this seriously. It's fine to go through the whole process of denouncing cowardly blah frickin' blah. What I thought was really interesting about the God Emperor's statements today was that they made it clear that they're condemning all political violence, which of course we know is conducted by Democrats. It is predominantly conducted by Antifa. And so it's just utterly ridiculous to pretend that Donald Trump's violent rhetoric is inspiring people to do bad and terrible things. Now, it is possible that the person responsible is actually a Republican. It's possible that the person responsible is a Channer pulling some sort of serious practical joke. But these bombs, so to speak, look like something out of the Acme catalog that you see in the Wile E. Coyote Roadrunner cartoons. We see this stuff over and over and over again. We see these hoaxes over and over and over again. And you know that the people perpetrating it are midwits. You know they're not terribly smart because they just think, well, it worked once, it worked twice, it worked 3 times. It will always work. Surely no one will ever notice this pattern of behavior. And of course, the media is leaping on this in a big way. What's funny is that there's even Democratic politicians like Cuomo who are claiming falsely that they received these fake bombs. When political violence, real political violence, takes place in a country, like for example, when the Shining Path went after politicians and police in Peru, there was no mistaking it. There was no mistaking the political violence in Ireland. But this stuff is a joke. It's a hoax. It's a false flag. It is fake news. And the whole idea is to attempt to repress Republican attacks on the Democrats because, and especially Republican attacks on the media because they're so effective. I mean, think about it. What is the narrative here? Because the president and others say that the media is fake, people are sending bombs in the mail and therefore the president shouldn't do that. How does this make any sense at all? There's no logic to it. If you actually wrote it out in a proper syllogistic form, you would see that it doesn't work. It's bad logic. And it's bad rhetoric too, because everybody knows it's fake. You're going to solve the problem of the news you push being fake by creating more fake news? The narrative is just absolutely ludicrous. And so, I think the correct thing to do is what you're seeing people do on Twitter and what you're seeing people do on various blogs and stuff, which is to mock it mercilessly. Whenever they bring it up, just say it's fake. Fake news, fake bomb. And so, the thing is that, this pattern of attempting to shut down criticism by playing the victim is not new. There's even a joke, a meme about it. Some of you have probably seen this one before. Hey, Rabbi, what you doing? Because most, if not all, of the various anti-Semitic graffiti that is in most of the desecrations of Jewish graves and stuff is done by Jews. This is not a conspiracy theory. It's a fact. There was this wave of terror, all these bomb threats and death threats being called into synagogues, hundreds of them, and it was all one Jewish kid in Israel. And you see the same thing in the black community. The black community, especially in college, is always putting up nooses and writing various racial insults and stuff on things, and they love to play the victim. And you see the same thing from gays. They love to spray paint queer or whatever on their own cars and on their own garages. Most of the hate crimes are hoaxes. It's almost... Somebody said, today Ben Shapiro immediately jumped to his Jewish high school getting bomb threats 3 times a year. Yeah, it was Jews doing it. I'm not saying that, there aren't anti-Semitic people doing anti-Semitic things, especially in the Middle East and especially in Europe, around Muslim communities that are extremely ill-disposed to Israelis, the Jewish people in general and Israelis in particular. But your average, phoning in a fake threat to a synagogue or to a Jewish school is usually, reliably done by a Jew, exactly as a hate crime done at a college directed at a black individual, and it's usually a black woman, is almost invariably determined to have been done by the subject of the fake crime, the hoax crime. And so, it's just absolutely ludicrous. And everybody knows it. We all know it. They're all fake. well, if you want to be specific, they're almost all fake. And so, whenever you see this kind of stuff, whenever you see these kind of hoaxes, you already know who's responsible. It's whoever the hoax crime is being nominally directed at. It will not surprise me in the slightest if the responsible parties for this particular wave of hoax bombs turns out to be, some sort of Democratic activist. If you look at who was targeted, and the fact that CNN was targeted, it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if it turned out to be a CNN employee. Doesn't mean it is. I'm simply saying that that's what the pattern indicates. Pattern recognition is not conclusive, but it usually gives you a very good place to start looking. I have not commented on Alex Soros's criticism of Trump. I don't care what Alex Soros says. He is the crown prince of evil, and anything that he says, is going to be a lie. How could all these packages arrive on the same morning? Well, that's an interesting question. You certainly can't rely upon the U.S. Postal Service to deliver everything on time. So, anyhow, this is just another series of false flags. It's not the last false flag we're going to see before the election. A number of us have, said repeatedly that there will be false flags. There's probably going to be at least one more school shooting before the election, because these are reactions and to the success that Republicans are having. And so it's actually a very positive sign that they're pulling this kind of nonsense, because they would not be pulling this kind of nonsense if things were going well. They're doing this because they're getting increasingly desperate. There is not going to be a blue wave. The Republicans are not going to lose the House or the Senate, and Donald Trump's hand is going to be politically strengthened. And so, and like I said, Trump did an excellent job of turning the situation around and pointing to the real political violence, the real culpable parties who are actively committing politically inspired violence throughout the United States, and that is the left. That is, nobody's taking this seriously because everybody knows it's bullshit. This is the last time that we saw something this fake was when a actual actor, a literal actor, went to Comet Pizza and fired a single shot at the floor, harming no one. They did it when the owner was not around. This is transparently false. As I mentioned on the blog, at least when the Nazis pulled their false flags, like the burning of the Reichstag, they actually burned the building down. And so, and you have to understand that false flags are absolutely normal. They go back hundreds of years, and they're particularly common when the United States wants to try to do something. There were false flags during the Vietnam era. There were false flags during the Spanish-American War, false flags leading up to World War I. This is all absolutely normal. And so, anyhow, the you just need to look at the pattern, and with the election coming up, and the Democrats getting increasingly desperate, they're throwing everything against the wall, hoping that it'll stick. So he said, it's not false. Shapiro has already spoken, and when Shapiro speaks, the truth has been dictated. No, I mean, if Ben Shapiro is saying something, that's a pretty strong counter indicator. Shapiro is a Weasley little liar. And, there's a reason that he twice ran from debating me, because I know he's a Weasley little liar. I can demonstrate that he's a Weasley little liar, and he knows it. If you pay any attention to Ben Shapiro, you're a moron. I mean, I'm sorry, but you are. You're. I mean, all of these guys. People have been asking me about Scott Adams, Jordan Peterson, Dennis Prager, Ben Shapiro. They're all fake right, to the extent that you can even call them right. It's not fair to Scott Adams. He doesn't pretend to be of the right. And actually, to be fair, Jordan Peterson barely pretends. But none of these guys are trustworthy. None of these guys speak the truth. None of these guys can be relied upon in any way, excuse me, in any way, shape, or form. And so, it's going to be interesting to see how things go, because more and more people are beginning to see through this kind of crap. And I mean, people are now, most people are seeing through these fake bombs. Most people are seeing through the fake news. Most people, not most people, people are beginning to see through the Jordan Petersons, the Ben Shapiros. Dennis Prager had this ridiculous video up talking about how all the other nations of the world are blood and soil, or whatever it was, race and whatever, except for America. America is just an idea. This is total, utter nonsense. It is totally ahistorical. It is totally false. It was hilarious to read the Twitter thread, because people who, with a better sense of history, or more to the point, people who are actually telling the truth, absolutely handed Dennis Prager his lying ass, pointing out everything from the Naturalization Act of 1790 to all the various laws, Supreme Court decisions, and so forth, pointing out that everything Prager was saying was a lie. And so, you can't trust people who lie to you. You cannot trust people who push a false sense of history. That whole PragerU thing is ridiculous. And so, this is funny. I recently bumped into someone who thinks Ben is a good debater and has good points sometimes. These moderate idiots are insufferable. Well, they're stupid. I mean, they may think that Ben is a good debater, and certainly Ben does a good job when he is debating some low IQ left-winger. Congratulations. It's like being impressed by somebody saying, he's a really good mixed martial artist. He beat the hell out of that 10-year-old. You know, but these guys run. They absolutely run from people like me, from people like Milo, you know, people like, I mean, even you know, people like Molyneux, you know, and you know, I'm not saying that I don't have my weaknesses. I'm not saying that everything that Milo says is correct. But when we're wrong, it's because we happen to get it wrong. It's not because we're lying to you. You know, I used to defend free trade. I was wrong. I admitted it. You know, because I was formerly a defender of free trade, I understand all the pro-free trade arguments extremely well. It just happens to be that those arguments all have significant flaws. And there are some other factors that have come into play. Some of them are things that Ian Fletcher's raised. Some of them are things that I've raised. You know, when you come across new, accurate information, you have to change your mind. Tucker Carlson is pretty good. You know, I don't have a list of people that can say, oh, you know, you can absolutely trust this guy and so forth. You know, what I pay attention to is people who tell the truth to the best of their ability and their perceptions. You know, people say, well, you know, how come you defend Mike Cernovich when he's a civic nationalist and he's wrong about this, that, or the other thing? Why? Because Mike believes what he's saying. You know, I know Mike. I've hung out with Mike. I've talked to Mike. You know, when he is overreacting, it's because he's overreacting. That's what he does. You know, and I'm not saying that you should take anything that I say at face value. You know, you can test anything that I say, and I'm happy to have you do it. Now, don't waste my time doing it. You know, I'm not interested in having the same discussion over and over and over again with 50 different people. I mean, you know, I got an email yesterday. I may have been a little bit hard on him because he didn't deserve it. And I explained that in a follow-up email. But I got this long email from a guy who said he'd recently discovered me. He'd been a Jordan Peterson fan who's expressed some appreciation for my having helped him see through some of Peterson's shenanigans. And he expressed a bit of chagrin that he hadn't, seen the obvious himself. But then he had this long section all about his personal history and is he really truly an American and this, that, and the other thing. And I just emailed back and I said, dude, I don't answer, what about me? I don't care. It's not my problem. And more importantly, I don't define the issue. I'm simply talking about the historical facts, the historical realities, and I understand that they are not simple, they're not binary, everything. We live in a world of probability. We live in a world of fractions and percentages. And so if you're looking for absolute binary distinctions and divisions, you are always going to be lurching from one error to another. You need to look at the patterns. You need to look at the probabilities. And you need to understand the truth as best you can. And so, do you think Mike Cernovich and Milo are gateways to real nationalism? I think they can be. I wouldn't say that they are the gateways to it, but I think that they are definitely definitely capable of being gateways to that. I mean, Mike wrote a great nationalistic foreword to the book that Red Eagle and I published, Cuckservative. It's really good. I mean, yes, he's a bit of a civic nationalist. So is Donald Trump. We don't expect people. You should never expect anyone, friend, ally, foe, to agree with everything that you say or you believe. I don't even agree with everything I believed 5 years ago. I agree with even less stuff that I believed 15 years ago. In that interview with Bleeding Cool that they deleted when the guy determined that Vox Day is not a white supremacist and Vox Day is not some insane bigoted hater and so forth. They had to pull it because the guy went into it thinking, I'm going to prove he's a white supremacist, and then realized that just wasn't the case. And he was honest enough and had enough integrity to say that. Of course, that violated the narrative, so the SJWs promptly launched their attacks on him, and they pulled it down and issued a public apology. They apologized for inadvertently telling the truth. But when you look at this stuff, it's kind of funny. I was listening to an Owen Benjamin video the other day, and actually today, the other day being today, and it was really funny because he was talking about our generation, the Generation X, and he's a little bit younger than me, but we've had the same experience. He said, he was defending Alex Jones, and I think it was a very accurate defense because he said, of course we don't believe anything that the media is saying. If you look at what we were taught that the globe is cooling, we're entering a new ice age. The best food for you to eat is lots and lots of bread and carbohydrates and margarine. What was the other one? I can't remember what the other one was, but and all of this is science, which you must believe. And now, of course, we're being told the exact opposite. And Owen, who does this is much funnier than I am, of course, he says, the frogs are gay. Maybe they are. But the point is that you cannot believe the media. You cannot believe the scientists. You can't. When I say you can't believe them, I'm not saying you shouldn't. I mean, you shouldn't. But when I say you can't, I mean literally you can't. Oh, that's right. That's true. Our big masculine sports role model when we were growing up was, he was on the cover of the Wheaties box. He was the Olympic gold champion in the decathlon. The ultimate male role model, Bruce Jenner. So now we've gone from ice age to global warming. We've gone from eat lots and lots of bread to don't eat bread. We've gone from, eat margarine because it's better for you than butter to don't eat margarine, it'll do in your cholesterol. And of course, we've got the whole Bruce Jenner, Caitlyn Jenner thing. So it's no wonder that Generation X is so cynical. And the thing is that it's correct for us to be cynical because the only theory of history that stands up to any examination at all is the conspiracy theory of history. You cannot understand history without understanding that conspiracy theory is a much better lens to understand historical events through than great man theory, than the Marxist inevitable progress to the workers' paradise theory, or than everything is a coincidence theory. So, do you not believe in climate change at all? No, I do not believe in climate change. I mean, I think that climate obviously changes. Let me back up. Climate obviously changes. It has changed. We know that. But the thing you have to keep in mind is that I grew up in Minnesota. I grew up in a place that had been completely covered by glaciers. So yes, the world is clearly warming because we're not covered by freaking glaciers. Now, I don't know where it's going to stop. I don't know when the cycle is going to turn back and forth, but the idea that, and also the other big thing is it's obvious that all of the global warming models are completely false because they've been continually and reliably wrong, as I had anticipated, as many skeptics had anticipated from the beginning. If you are going to believe the global warming folks, then it's already too late. I think it was 20 some years ago that Al Gore said we had 12 years to save the planet. Well, it's over. So whether you believe in it or not, there's nothing that can be done about it. So stop babbling about it. Yeah, they do tend to ignore that big shiny thing in the sky. To be honest, I'm more worried about the fact that there's no sunspots and what that might signify than, and I do think if I had to bet on it, I'd bet on global cooling rather than global warming. Let's see here. Any thoughts on newer physics? No, not really. We have Stickwick on the blog is an ace astrophysicist. I just tend to ask her what she thinks. I'm more than happy to let her do the heavy lifting on that. The whole Maunder minimum thing. That will be a lot more likely than whatever it is, greenhouse gases turning everything into Venus. So, but the thing is that, all you need to do is look at the patterns. Look at who tells you the truth. Look at who lies. Look at who makes a prediction and is wrong. One of the reasons why I'm so confident that there's not going to be a blue wave is because Nate Silver, who has been wildly wrong, is now saying that there's an 85% certainty, higher level of certainty, that there's going to be a Democratic House than he was certain that Hillary Clinton was going to be the president. We know, what do we know? We know Nate Silver's models are bad. So, whatever he says, he's probably wrong. Like the new Baby Metal song? Not particularly. I've been very disappointed with all 3 new Baby Metal songs. These days I'm actually listening to more Bandmade. I mean, losing Mikio and losing Yui is not promising. One of the other Baby Metal fans in the family even theorizes that they're using different producers now, which may be the part of the problem. I'm currently a STEM student, and I laugh at all the assumptions my professors make. Oh, there's no question. I mean, all you got to do is talk to a scientist for 5 minutes, and you'll realize what complete morons they are outside of their immediate level of expertise. I mean, Richard Dawkins was like the poster child for this. For somebody who can't even get stuff in his own field of specialty right, and just reveals himself to be a completely hopeless jackass outside of it. The alt hero backers got an email yesterday, but then the blog had a celebration before I could get to it. Is there another chance? Not right now, but there will be. Phase 1 is over. We will let you know about phase 2 in time. So exactly when, I don't know, but we are in the process of dealing with that. Do you know of Tim Pool? I've heard of him, but I don't pay any attention to him. Let's see here. Do you think that European Americans outbreeding other groups could be a viable answer to the demographic situation? No. It's not going to happen. At least not in the current cultural milieu. What is with your recent post saying don't talk about it? Is it reverse psychology? No. I mean, it's a operation that was very successful. We'll talk about it in a few weeks. And it's something that was, reliant on a specific group of supporters, and they did an excellent job. They outperformed, and you'll all hear about it reasonably soon. Do you think these various false flags are coordinated by one deep state faction, or are they independent actions of multiple factions? I think it's one small group. Probably not a particularly competent one. Let's see. Should we be preparing for the end times? No. Other than I do think that you should always be aware of the trend. I mean, clearly, the whole idea of Mark of the Beast, which sounded ridiculous, now suddenly makes a lot of sense when you can't even buy a freaking comic book from someone without getting the approval of some of the technological authorities. Are any school shootings legit? Yes. Alt Hero 5 status, I just got page 18 today, so we're getting closer. The hurricane got in the way. So we're going to get 5 out first and then 6 pretty soon after. It may prevent us from being able to get the first omnibus out before Christmas. We'll see. It's going to be a close run thing. We've actually got like 3 or 4 big books coming out too. I mean, when I say big, I mean some of the biggest books we've ever published. So it's going to be interesting. What is your opinion on universal salvation? I think it's nonsense. Soros funding the migrant caravan. Maybe. I heard reports that Venezuela was doing it, but certainly Soros could be doing it through Venezuela. Again, getting back to the Generation X skepticism, I grew up with the Hal Lindsey, who are the others? I can't remember. There's like Hal Lindsey, and there are a few others who were like, convinced that the world was going to end. And I remember there was one thing that was like related to 1988. There was stuff in the 70s, the whole like Larry Norman, which inspired the Left Behind books then in the 90s. What you have to understand is that back in the year in the late 990s, people were equally convinced that the world was about to end. That was over 1,000 years ago. And so Christians have always believed that the world is about to end. And they have been wrong for over 1,000 years about it. The important thing, is to look at what the Bible actually says, which is no man will know the hour. So stop trying to figure it out. Let's see here. Spencer is innocent till proven guilty. Absolutely. But as someone else points out, Vox has always said Spencer is a liberal. No shock. Spencer's fake right. He's not right-wing at all. The idea that just because you are pro-white makes you right is totally nonsensical. Have you ever heard of the Christian author Joel Richardson? No. That's funny. Apparently, the guy who wrote 88 Reasons Why Jesus Will Return in 1988, the next year he wrote 89 Reasons Why Jesus. Yeah, some people really like to stick to their ideas. Anyhow, so the key thing is be skeptical. Always be skeptical of any self-serving individual or any self-serving organization. And so, and when you see people, saying X is good for me, but not for thee, do not credit them. Don't say, oh, they're doing so much good here or there, whatever. Anyone who is a liar, anyone who lacks intellectual integrity is not someone you should put any faith in about anything, because they will sell you out, they will betray you, they will let you down whenever it happens to serve their purposes. And you can't know in advance when that's going to be. So, well, have a good evening, and we'll look forward to seeing you at the next Darkstream. I'm Vox Day, and you have been watching the Darkstream.